The morning of my wedding smelled like rain. That soft, metallic scent that rises from the earth before the clouds decide whether to bless or punish. I stood at the kitchen window, barefoot on the cool tile, watching the first threads of light slip through the gray sky. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that feels like it's listening. My dress hung on the back of the bedroom door, simple and white, swaying gently each time the air shifted. No lace, no jewels, no veil trailing behind me like a ghost of what was expected. Just a cotton dress, sewn by a woman from town who charged me less because she said, "You remind me of my daughter. She married under an apple tree." I smiled at that. I liked the idea that love didn't have to live in chandeliers or grand halls. That it could belong to small places too. Backyards, kitchens, the smell of rosemary, the hum of rain. Outside, our little backyard waited. The grass glistened with dew. The old oak tree stood proud in the corner, and the string lights Daniel and I had hung last night sagged slightly between poles. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. I had imagined this morning so many times. Not the wedding, but the feeling. Peace, warmth, a quiet certainty that I was walking toward the right life. But instead, peace felt fragile, like glass in my hands. I made coffee, letting the kettle hiss against the silence. The mug trembled just a little when I lifted it. Maybe from excitement. Maybe from something heavier. Their words still lived inside me, even though I wished they didn't. My father, pacing in the living room the day I told him, "A backyard wedding, Nora? You're joking. After everything we've given you, you want to stand in the dirt?" He'd said it like love was something you measure in square footage, and my mother, she didn't even argue. She just looked down at her hands and sighed, as if my choice had already embarrassed her before it even happened. They'd wanted a ballroom. A live band. A guest list that proved we were worth noticing. But Daniel and I never wanted to be noticed. We wanted to be known. There's a difference. He grew up like me. Quiet, steady, raised in a house that taught you to apologize for wanting too little or too much. He was the kind of man who'd rather build something small and honest than borrow something big and false. When I told him what my parents had said, he just smiled and said, "Then we'll dance under the sky." That's a better ceiling anyway. That night, I'd cried a little, not because I doubted my choice, but because I wished love could be enough for them too. Now, as I watched the clouds shift, I wondered if they were still planning to come. My mother had called late the night before, her voice soft but sharp enough to cut. She said, "We've decided not to attend, Nora. It's not what we imagined for you. A wedding should be an event, not a backyard affair." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the phone in my hand, feeling every year of trying to please her stretch out like a long, tired road. Then I said quietly, "It's okay. Mom, you don't have to come." There was a pause, then a whisper. "I hope you don't regret it." But I didn't regret it. Not the choice, not the love, not the simplicity of it all. The only thing I regretted was still caring about their approval. Now, on the morning of my wedding, I promised myself something different. No more apologizing for peace. No more shrinking so others could feel tall. I set my coffee cup down and walked outside. The air was thick and damp, the kind that curls your hair and sticks to your skin. The oak tree rustled gently, its leaves trembling like they knew a secret. Beneath it, the aisle was nothing more than a row of mismatched chairs and a path of wildflowers. Daniel's friend had helped us string lights the night before, and now they drooped lazily over the fence, glinting faintly in the early light. I could still see the footprints we'd left in the soil. 2 pairs, side by side, where we'd stood and tested where to place the arch. It wasn't symmetrical, and I loved that about it. Everything about this wedding was imperfect. But for once in my life, imperfection felt holy. A car passed in the distance. The sound faded quickly. A neighbor's wind chimes sang softly, a sound like glass laughter. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked, then settled. The world was ordinary. And yet, everything inside me was trembling, not from nerves, but from a strange, deep peace. I thought about how many times I'd been told to make things look right. How often I'd dressed to match a version of myself my mother could present to the world. How often I'd smiled through dinners that felt like rehearsals for a play I didn't audition for. And now, here I was, about to marry the man I loved, barefoot on damp grass, with nothing to prove to anyone. Still, there was a small ache inside me. That part of a daughter that never stops wanting her parents to be proud. That childlike hope that they might walk through the gate and see not the yard, not the simplicity, but me. I closed my eyes and took a breath. The wind carried the scent of wet wood, lavender, and something else, the faint sweetness of freedom. Inside, my phone buzzed once. I didn't move to check it, because in that moment I realized the silence they left behind had become something beautiful. It was space. Space for me to breathe, to love, to begin again without permission. I touched the rough bark of the oak tree and smiled. When I was a child, I used to climb this tree whenever they argued, hiding among the branches, pretending the leaves could protect me. Now, standing beneath it as a grown woman, I realized the tree hadn't changed. It had always been waiting for me to stop hiding. A drop of rain landed on my shoulder, then another. The clouds had finally decided. I tilted my face up to the sky. The first trickle of rain rolled down my cheek, cool and clean, like a quiet blessing. And I whispered to the morning, "I'm ready." The wind stirred the branches. The lights above me swayed, and somewhere in that trembling stillness, I felt the beginning of something sacred, the kind of love that doesn't need witnesses, the kind that grows roots in small, steady soil. By noon, the air had turned silver. The rain that had whispered earlier in the morning now hovered, patient and waiting, as if it knew the world was about to shift. The backyard looked different in the midday light, alive, glowing. Daniel was out there barefoot, adjusting the chairs one last time, his shirt rolled up at the sleeves, hair still damp from the mist. I watched him through the kitchen window, the glass fogged slightly where my breath touched it. He was humming, off-key, content, utterly himself. He looked up and caught my reflection. "You sure you don't want a tent?" he called through the open window. I smiled. "If it rains, we'll dance in it," he grinned. Deal. There it was, the piece I'd been looking for. Not in grand gestures, but in small certainties. By 2:00, guests began to arrive. They came with casseroles and coolers, arms full of flowers, laughter slipping easily between them. My coworker Carla carried a camera around her neck. She'd offered to take photos. Nothing fancy. Just whatever moments wanted to be remembered. Someone's child was running in circles around the chairs, leaving muddy footprints. Someone else was tuning a guitar under the porch awning. It felt like home. Messy, warm, alive. But beneath all that joy was a thin thread of nervousness winding through me. That quiet, familiar ache that comes from knowing who's missing. I checked my phone once, then twice. Nothing. No messages. No call. Part of me had hoped, foolishly maybe, that they'd change their minds. That my mother would appear at the gate holding flowers from her garden, that my father would walk me to the tree and pretend not to cry. Instead, only the wind came. It carried the sound of laughter, the smell of rain, and the faint echo of what might have been. When the ceremony music began, it was soft, just one guitar and a voice. We had chosen the first day of my life by Bright Eyes because it wasn't about perfection. It was about beginning again and again, even when it hurts. The guests turned toward the path of wildflowers. I took a breath so deep it hurt my chest, and that's when I saw it, a black car pulling slowly to the curb. I knew the make and model before I saw the faces. My father's sedan. My heart stuttered. They stepped out like they were entering unfamiliar territory. My father straightening his jacket, my mother clutching her purse close. They didn't walk toward the crowd. They stood at the fence line as if waiting for permission to exist in this version of my life. The rain began to fall. Not heavy, just a thin, forgiving drizzle that softened everything it touched. For a second, I almost ran to them. That small child inside me, still hoping for approval, still aching to be seen. But Daniel's eyes found mine across the yard. He didn't shake his head, he didn't need to. His gaze said, "You don't owe them the first step." The music swelled. So I walked, barefoot, slow, steady, down the uneven path we'd built together. Each flower brushed against my dress, leaving tiny damp kisses. Each breath was a small prayer. People turned, smiling, clapping quietly. Carla's camera clicked like a heartbeat. And beyond them, behind the fence, my parents stood under the gray sky, faces unreadable. The guitar trembled on the last note. Daniel reached for my hands. The world seemed to hush. Even the birds, even the wind. I could hear my own pulse. He said his vows first, words we'd written together but never rehearsed. I promise to choose you in the quiet moments, the ones that don't make the highlight reel. When we're tired, when the roof leaks, when the world feels too loud, I'll still reach for your hand. His voice caught on that last sentence, and I knew, right then, that no ballroom could have held this kind of truth. When it was my turn, I felt my throat close. Not from fear, but from the weight of all that had led here. Every argument, every silent dinner, every moment I had felt too small to love correctly. I promise, I began, to stop apologizing for the way I love. To grow with you, not for you. To build a life that's honest, even when it's quiet. A tear slipped down Daniel's cheek. And then, the sky opened. It wasn't a downpour. It was a baptism. The guests gasped, then laughed. Shoes were abandoned, arms lifted. Someone shouted, "It's good luck!" And everyone cheered. I looked toward the fence. My mother was covering her head with her purse. My father's suit darkened with rain. He looked uncertain. Like the story he'd told himself about failure didn't fit what he was seeing, because it wasn't embarrassment. It was joy. Unfiltered, imperfect, undeniable joy. The guitar kept playing, strings slick with rain. Carla's camera clicked faster, the lens misting with droplets. And Daniel pulled me close, pressing his forehead to mine. We didn't kiss for the cameras or for the guests. We kissed because everything else fell away. In that moment, the rain was forgiveness. The world blurred, and all I could see was the color of his eyes. Storm gray, steady, home. Somewhere behind us, I heard my mother's voice break. Not a sob, but a sound that could have been one. I didn't turn around. Not out of pride, but peace. When the vows ended, applause rippled through the yard. Someone handed me a towel I never used. Someone else poured lemonade, the ice clinking like laughter. Daniel and I danced. No choreography, no music at first. Just two people swaying in the rain, surrounded by love that didn't need to prove itself. And for a fleeting second, I saw my parents standing side by side, their hands almost touching. I don't know what they felt. But I know what I did. Freedom, not the loud, dramatic kind that burns bridges, but the soft kind that builds a door where there used to be a wall. Later, Carla told me she'd filmed the entire thing, not to post, just to remember. She said, "There was something sacred in the way you both looked at each other." The rain made everything glow. I didn't know then what that video would become. I didn't know that the love they called embarrassing would soon travel farther than any ballroom ever could. All I knew was that I had stood beneath the sky and chosen myself and him in the same breath. The rain had stopped by the time we cut the cake. The clouds split open, spilling light across the soaked chairs, and the oak tree shimmered with drops that looked like 1,000 tiny suns. I remember whispering to Daniel, "If this is embarrassment, I never want pride." He laughed softly and kissed my forehead. And the world, for once, felt perfectly small, just the right size for love. 2 days after the wedding, the rain finally left. It didn't drift away so much as fade, like a song ending mid-note. The air was washed clean, the grass heavy with scent. Inside our little house, the world felt newly made. I woke early, still half expecting to hear laughter outside, but all I heard was the steady hum of the refrigerator and the far-off call of a mourning dove. Daniel was asleep, one arm thrown across the sheets, his ring catching the morning light. I went to the kitchen, barefoot again, and poured coffee into the chipped mug I'd used every morning for years. The cup was warm between my hands, grounding me. That's when my phone started vibrating across the counter. Once, twice, then again. At first, I thought it was work, an early email or some forgotten appointment. But the screen was filled with names I didn't recognize, strangers, hundreds of notifications from social media. The first message read, "Your wedding made me cry. Thank you for reminding me what love looks like." My stomach fluttered. I opened another. And another, a friend had sent a link. Rain-soaked backyard wedding goes viral for all the right reasons. The video started with the oak tree. Soft guitar, the rain falling like silver threads. Then there we were, Daniel and me holding hands, laughing through the storm. Not polished. Not perfect, just real. Carla must have uploaded it. She'd written a short caption. "Love doesn't need a ballroom to be beautiful." I watched in silence as the rain blurred around us, as guests laughed and clapped, as Daniel whispered something that made me smile. Every frame looked like a painting made of ordinary moments. The comments poured in faster than I could read them. This is the kind of love we forgot existed. The rain was like a blessing. I've never cried over strangers before. And then I saw one that made me stop. Look at her parents in the back. You can see it hit them, what they almost missed. I froze the video and looked closer. There they were, standing by the fence. My mother's hair plastered to her face, my father's shoulders slumped as if something inside him had quietly broken open. It was strange, seeing them through a stranger's lens. They looked smaller somehow. Human. Not the unreachable figures I'd built from expectation and disappointment. I didn't feel anger, just a tender ache. By noon, the story had been picked up by local news. Reporters wrote about the humility and warmth of a backyard ceremony that captured hearts everywhere. Someone even used the phrase authentic love in an artificial age. Daniel walked into the kitchen, still sleepy, rubbing his eyes. "Why's your phone blowing up?" I turned the screen toward him. He laughed, then leaned over to kiss the top of my head. "Well," he said softly, "guess they got the tent after all. Just not the kind they expected." We spent the rest of the morning answering messages from strangers who somehow felt like friends. A woman wrote, "My parents didn't come to my wedding either. Watching you helped me forgive them." A man said, "I showed this to my daughter. She wants her ceremony under a tree, too." Every word felt like a ripple of light moving outward. And then, my phone rang. Mom. For a moment, I just stared at the name. My first instinct was to let it go to voicemail. But the silence around me felt heavy, like it was waiting. I answered. "Hi, Mom." She breathed out my name the way she used to when I was small and had done something unexpected. "Nora." Neither of us spoke for a while. I could hear birds through the receiver, the faint hum of a car engine. "We saw the video," she finally said. Her voice trembled on the edge of pride and apology. "You looked happy," I said quietly. "I was." She cleared her throat. "It was beautiful. The rain, the way you two smiled, it was like something out of a movie." Another pause. Then softer. "I didn't know it could be beautiful like that." There it was. Not a full apology, just a crack in the armor. Enough for the light to find its way through. "Thanks, Mom," I said. "That means a lot." When the call ended, I set the phone down and just stood there. For years, I'd rehearsed what I'd say if they ever regretted the way they'd treated me. But when the moment came, all I felt was stillness. Forgiveness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just walks in quietly, sits beside you, and waits. That evening, the sky turned the color of pale honey. The grass still held small puddles from the storm. Daniel lit the string lights again, their reflection flickering in the water like stars fallen too low. We brought out the leftover cake, 2 forks and a blanket. No guests this time, no cameras. Just us. The yard smelled of wet earth and lilac. The mason jars of flowers had wilted slightly, petals drooping, but they looked honest that way, lived in. I noticed one jar still resting on the porch railing. Half filled with rainwater, stems tangled together. I picked it up, the glass cool against my palms. Somehow it reminded me of everything the day had been. Unpolished, fleeting, but full of light. Daniel watched me quietly. "You okay?" I nodded. "I think so. For the first time, I really am." He smiled that slow, steady smile that always made me feel safe. Then he said, "The news called. They want to interview us about the wedding." I laughed. "I don't think they'll like our secret." "What secret?" "That it was never about them watching us. It was about us watching each other." He reached for my hand, and we sat there in silence, listening to the hum of the lights, the soft creak of the porch. Later, as darkness thickened, I walked to the fence, the same place my parents had stood. The grass was cool beneath my feet. I ran my hand along the wood, damp and smooth. It no longer felt like a boundary. It felt like history, something that could stay behind me without holding me back. I whispered a quiet thank you into the night. Not to them exactly, but to everything that had shaped me enough to let go. Then I turned off the porch light. The soft click echoed across the yard, a sound that felt final and kind at the same time. In the darkness, the oak tree shimmered faintly under the moon. The chairs were still there, waiting, empty but full of memory. I thought of that little girl who used to climb the same tree to hide from the noise. If she could see me now, standing barefoot, unafraid, loved, maybe she'd finally climb down. The night was so quiet I could hear my own breath. Peace had a sound after all. It wasn't silence. It was presence. I turned back toward the house, toward the man waiting inside, toward the life we were building one honest day at a time. And as I closed the door behind me, I felt the last weight lift. Sometimes the love they laugh at is the one that teaches them what love truly means.